Day 38. We're going to talk first about Hypervolt, and then we're going to dig into a couple stretches with Jane and Paul. For my 2 cents, I use this most every day. I use it before I do dynamic range and start my session, and then I'll use it at the end of the day at home as a restoration recovery piece. Inside of my use of it, what I find is predominantly I'll use one of these 2 heads for pre-workout or warming up. They feel the most sort of like broad in general and easiest to move through the different muscle groups. Otherwise, this guy I find actually does a good job of sort of spanning places like biceps, forearms, triceps, and applies just a little more pressure as it sort of bridges the muscle. Other than that, I'll leave it to Heather to discuss the rest.
Okay, so this is another version of a Hypervolt, and I think amongst all of us, we found that there's quite a few different ones that work, and they all have different head options. So this is actually Jane's, and this is her preferred one to use. So we'll use this as a demo for today. I just want to go over a couple quick things about timing and a few protocol pieces with using these. I think it's important to keep in mind that they're not meant to replace your other types of mobility that you do. So I would say that I still spend the majority of my time foam rolling and stretching and using the lacrosse ball, but there is a time and a place. So pre and post workout is really nice. And also for some areas that are actually just really awkward to access with a foam roller, and so you're not likely to spend time on them, in which case you're more likely to spend time here. So the things that I want to pay attention to here are just remembering that this does have an effect on the nervous system in terms of whether it sedates or inhibits a muscle, and so you do want to be using it for a significant amount of time to achieve what you're trying to achieve with a muscle group. So if you're going to spend time working through your quad, try and spend about 3 minutes in that whole area. So not necessarily 3 minutes on one spot, but making sure that you're following that muscle group for that period of time. So the quads are a really easy one to do because everyone can usually visualize that it runs up and down. But when you start to get into muscle groups like through the shoulder, you've got things like the traps, which actually fan out in different directions. And it's really worth understanding what anatomy you're targeting in order to make sure that you're being effective, because you want to follow along the fiber direction. Now, there is a ton of stuff on the internet, pictures, pull something up on your phone, or even just a general diagram of the shoulder and look at the fiber directions and make sure that you're targeting what you want to target. So if I turn this on, I'm using it on a pretty low setting. And the reason I'm actually doing this with Jane is because you don't always have to do it yourself. If you've got someone at home that can help you with this, it's certainly going to be more relaxing for her to just hang out and not be trying to articulate her shoulders to get to something that's awkward to get to. So following the directions of the muscle fibers. And then, yeah, I would spend 3 minutes working all through the various portions of her traps. You can do a lot of this stuff yourself, but certainly in those harder to access places, it's nice to have someone do it for you. So in line with following fiber direction and having a good sense of the muscular anatomy, the other thing you want to do is avoid really hammering away over the bony prominences. So don't do these directly over your spine. The spine of your scapula is here. You don't necessarily want to wail away over that. Sometimes you might find if you're getting this like aggressive sort of bouncing of the device off of the tissue, you might actually want to try changing the head on it or changing the speed and see if that helps. Some people seem to have the desire to crank it up as high as they can, thinking that more is better, but we all tended to agree that some of the lower settings are actually more effective for us. And then the one last thing to pay attention to is if you've had treatments with a healthcare practitioner where you're getting soft tissue work and you have a sense of areas that you want to target, you should be following those guidelines from that treatment. So you don't want to get trapped in just using this on things that are sore, because sometimes the things that are sore are really aggravated because they're under a lot of stress, but it's actually the other side, and I think people start to learn this, it's the other side of the joint that needs to release as well. So trying to make sure that you're paying attention to the front and the back of the joint. So if I was to work through Jane's traps and through her shoulder, I'd also probably recommend that she spend some time working through her own pecs to help balance out the joint.
Okay, so just to build off of some of the shoulder mobility pieces that we've done so far, I just wanted to show an alternate chest opening sort of stretch that you can do either off the side of your couch or the side of your bed, or if you have like an ottoman or something like that. Ideally you want a fairly stable surface, but you probably want to add like a bit of a layer of softness to it, just because we're going to be sort of digging into an area that can be a little sensitive if it's a really hard surface. So just kind of coming up on your knees, you want a decently wide base because you're going to be sort of leaning around a little bit just to get into some different fibers. And then just bringing your hands down, you're going to put one shoulder up onto your surface. You're wanting it to sort of hit right around the edge of the anterior deltoid there. And then as you sort of sink into that pec stretch, you're wanting to sink your chest towards the floor and almost turn away a little bit this direction. Okay, so it kind of looks like this. So you sink down a little, and then you're turning your torso away from the arm you're stretching, and you should feel a nice deep pec stretch right across there. And once you get into a position where you feel a nice stretch, you want to hold that for about 30 seconds, maybe 45. And then once you've completed that stretch, you're going to change your position slightly. You're just going to move your arm up, so you're creating less of a 90-degree angle of your shoulder and more of like a 120-degree. And with this one, because we're getting some different fibers, as you let your arm sort of, you're going to sink your chest down again, but now you're actually going to drop your hips backwards a little bit. So you're going to feel the stretch sort of coming across this angle versus more of a right angle. And again, just sink into that. Once you feel a nice stretch, you can just hold that for, again, 30 to 45 seconds would be great, longer if it feels right. And then you can switch sides. So another one of my favorite chest opening movements, you can use this as a dynamic stretch movement, or you can hold it as a static stretch as well. Ideally dynamic movement before your workout, and then a static would be better for a post-workout. So what I'm going to be doing, and I'll explain a bit before I assume the position, just because it's easier that way. I'm going to be laying face down on the floor. My arms are going to be starting in sort of a cactus position like this. This will be the first position. The second position will be, again, sort of that 120-degree angle versus the 90-degree angle, just to get in some different fibers across the chest. So once I lay down on the ground, I'm just going to be bringing the opposite leg across my body. So what you're going to do is it's going to be opening up your chest a little, but it's also going to be giving you a bit of a twist through your thoracic spine, which is a nice way to sort of create some mobility in there. So it looks like this. So that's holding the arms at the first position. The second position is going to be reaching up and out a little bit more. So that's the dynamic movement that's going to sort of get things moving. If you want to hold it as more of a static stretch, then you can do so. And you just want to hold this position again for 30 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute. And then you can bring the arm into the other position and hold it this way as well. This hand is supporting this position a little bit as well.
All right, to balance out some of the work that we just did with Jane, we're gonna switch to the back of your shoulder, working some of the rotator cuff muscles. We're gonna start by putting your arm across your body, just like this, pulling into your arm, and then feeling a nice stretch along the back side of your shoulder. You're going to pull your elbow into your hand to create a bit of a resistance pull, and then relax. Continue pulling that across your body. Again, pull into your hand a little bit, relax, and then continue pulling your arm across your body. Once you feel like you've reached a good end zone, gently pull into that, creating a little bit more tension. Hold that for a couple of seconds. Next one we're going to do is going to be a stretch where you're having both palms down. One hand is on the back of your elbow. You're going to pull that across just like that, and then let it off. Pull it across, feeling a nice stretch on the back of your arm, and then relax. Do that a few times until you can switch your hand position, turn your palm to the back, and again across your body. This is again just gonna grab some different fiber directions to help stretch the fascia in a slightly different way. Once you've done that a few times, switch your hand a little bit more upright, and again, nice and across your body. Okay, we're gonna do the crossbody abduction stretch again with a lacrosse ball. You're gonna put that right behind your shoulder into some of those sensitive areas. Again, arm across your body, grabbing with your hand, gently pulling that in a little bit while you're pushing into that lacrosse ball in the wall. Feeling a nice gentle stretch as well as some massage action from the ball. You can do that without your arm pulling and just working through some of the active release areas, trying to find some sensitive tissue to work through. Don't push overly hard, but creating a little bit of compression is good to help release that muscle. You can play around with how your hand position is while you're going through. So you can kind of have your palm back, palm down, maybe have your palm up, reach down. That's going to help to get different areas of that muscle.
Today we're going to talk first about Hypervolt or personal self massager, and then we're going to get into a couple stretches with Jane and Paul. So you fucked me on that, Paul. I tried to straight face that.